Exactly how many upgrade opportunities are awaiting the Dolphins at each position of need as we enter the 2025 NFL Draft? We take a head count here today on Locked On Dolphins.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, and the NFL Draft lead for the 33rd team. I want to give a special welcome and shout-outs to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on Locked On Dolphins. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by the 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. I have my voice back, which is nice. Had the marathon at the end of the week. Hopped on with Travis for drive time. That first piece of that ran today. Hopped on and collaborated with Reason on the YouTube channel for Finside the NFL. Did Locked On NFL Scouting. Did Locked On Dolphins. Was going through whatever the voice box was going through. A little rough to close the week, and nothing. A couple of days final NFL draft prep can't fix. So for today on the show, one of the things that I've done now that I've finalized all the grades, and I had 320 players graded as part of my work for the 33rd team, and I weighted all of those grades based off the traits that I grade each player at each position. Converted the grades into Dolphins-specific grades. So I have a Dolphins-specific draft board in addition to like my universal top 30 or all 32 team draft board. That's like national media board. So I have a national media board. I have a Dolphins board. Put those players on what simulates an NFL draft board where it's listed columns are by position and rows are by round grade to give a better reflection of the value. But then the last thing that I do, and I love to do this every year, is I will grade the Dolphins players on the roster through the same criteria. I graded about the top 40 players, or what I would have ascertained to be the top 40 players on the roster. And I put them on the board too. And the reason I do that is to have a clear visualization of this is where your players on the roster projected starters and meaningful backups. This is how I value them in the same scoring scale. So by contrast, I can look, and if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to pull it up right now. You're not meant to read the full details, so don't critique my little art project or whatever you guys call it. You guys, don't mean to rope everybody in. Somebody got real mad last week. They couldn't read it, and they said, love the content, but your arts and crafts project sucks. I can't read it. This is an audio program and a video program. So I don't want to make an audio program have to endure video exclusive content. So I'm going to bring it up as an example, but if you want to get your hands on it, it's over on Substack at Touchdown Miami. It's going to be, I'm running the kind of walkthrough video with the download today for you guys to be able to access it. So it's not available as of me recording this at lunchtime, but by end of day today over on Substack, Touchdown Miami, you will have a chance to download your own copy of the Miami Dolphins horizontal draft board for 2025. But for example, I have the blue nameplates are the Miami Dolphins players. And I can look and say, okay, the Dolphins have two very highly graded wide receivers. The best wide receivers in this year's draft do not rank near where the Dolphins' two wide receivers currently on the roster rank, which means there's no upgrade opportunities there. But you look at defensive tackle, you have Zach Sealer, your next defensive tackle grades equal to prospects that are in the 6th round. That's your second defensive tackle. So you are going to have a laundry list of names that are all upgrade opportunities versus what you currently have. Now, that's a blessing and a curse. It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? This is the full board if you're watching on YouTube. If you're just listening, you can get it today over on Touchdown Miami by the end of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, you want to get your hands on this to be able to zoom in and read the full details and be able to read all the names and get the exact snapshot picture. You can do that too, okay? But that's not the point of this program. This program is to go through. I counted it up And I did the final tally on how many players at each position serve as significant upgrades for the Dolphins versus a player that's in a specific spot. And we're going to go position by position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive tackle, interior offensive line, although that's just guard, defensive tackle. That number between Zach Sealer and Benito Jones is there's 26 defensive tackles, by the way. Edge, linebacker, corner, and safety. We're going to look at each one of them and methodically work our way through. We'll start with quarterback, and it should be of no surprise in a down quarterback class, when grading specifically for the traits of how an offense is currently optimized for the incumbent player, the starter, Tua Tagovailoa. I don't have Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, or Jackson Dart. I don't have them graded as walking in 2025 as a better option to play quarterback than your quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa, who your offense is currently tailored to. Now, you could change the criteria, and that would probably change Tua's grade. If they were weighted differently, it would change his and bring his down. And if you lean into a different player's strengths, it would probably bring their grade up, and maybe that would not be the case. But I can only grade it based off of what we know it to look like. And what we know is Tagovailoa is under contract. He's owed a boatload of money. The Dolphins need him to stay healthy. And I would expect the team's strategy to reflect that when it's all said and done. But no quarterbacks in this year's class, when grading the traits for an offense tailored to Tua, outrank Tua Tagovailoa's grade. For Zach Wilson, I do have 6. I have 6 names as possible players who could be improvements over Zach Wilson walking in the door. 3 of those are going to go in the first round for sure, in my opinion. That's Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jackson. Shedeur might not go top 32. He's going to go top 40. So Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders. Dolphins might not sniff any of them, depending on how the draft board goes. But then the other ones that grade as improvements over Zach Wilson include 3 more names in round 4, which is Kyle McCord, Will Johnson, and Tyler Shuck. Those are the names that I have graded as improvements over what the Dolphins have in Zach Wilson, potentially, as rookies. For Devon Achane, as the team's top-ranked running back, projected to be the starter. He was the de facto starter last year when Raheem dealt with the early season injury and Jalen Wright never really got off the ground. I do have 2 running backs that are graded higher than Devon Achane. Ashton Genty, obviously. I think he's a scheme-transcendent player. But then also Travion Henderson from Ohio State. He's not as explosive as Achane. He's not as good in the passing game. But he's a denser player. I think he's a little bit better runner creating yards after contact, where Devon's big successes with after contact come on the stretch runs where he gets outside the numbers. And guys are trying to make tackles, but they can't stay in his hip pocket. So as a downhill runner, I think he's a little bit better. And he's significantly better player in pass protection. Travion Henderson. If you were to extend that to include Jalen Wright, I have another 4 names. These are all, second, third round options and projections. That includes the other Ohio State running back, Quinshon Judkins, who transferred from Ole Miss, Bashaw Tootin, Caleb Johnson, and Omarion Hampton. I have those 4 runners also graded above Jalen Wright, in addition to the 2 that are above Devon Achane. So Omarion Hampton predictably probably going to go in the first round. Tootin and Caleb Johnson are both really good wide zone, outside zone fits. They ran predominantly that in college, and then Quinshon Judkins, a little bit more of an inside zone type of back. So a couple of different stylistic players, but predictively speaking, I think all of these players are top 100 picks. So you're not getting the alignment thus far, other than maybe if you're drafting in round 4 for a potential improvement over Zach Wilson. You don't really have those values that are leaping off the board at you just yet. Now, we're going to find some of those, and I would imagine that's part of dictating how this draft queue is going to play out for the Dolphins. You want to give yourself as wide of a road of practical application of players that can help the team. and try to strategize where you think those value opportunities are going to exist throughout the draft. But you also don't just want to exclusively draft for need. So it becomes this very difficult tightrope to walk. Now, we're going to get into pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, the rest of the trenches. That's coming your way next here on this episode of Locked on Dolphins. So make sure that you guys stick with us. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with the Fire TV Stick 4K devices with no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles like EA Sports College Football 25 or Call of Duty Black Ops 6 to Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite shows, it's gaming made simple, all on your Fire TV. So you can play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost for a console. And if you already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and the Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. So from a pass catcher's perspective, we already teased this on the show when we brought up the board, but when your wide receivers sit at the very tippy top and there's some of your best players on the team and they're very highly graded, and it's kind of considered to be a down wide receiver year, you don't have too many options for upgrade opportunities. And case in point, you can see the chasm that exists between the wide receiver one in the class and where Tyreek Hill's ranked on this board if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're not, like I said, today over on Substack on Touchdown Miami, the board's going to post. You can download it there. And if you can't read all the names and you're watching on YouTube, it's supposed to be that way. So it's cool. But the visual representation of the gap underscores very clearly that, we talk about replacement opportunities for Tyreek Hill. You're going to have a fall off at that position. So maybe if you want a pass catcher or a skill player, if you were to move on from Tyreek Hill, hypothetically, I think he's kind of sunk the opportunity to do that at this point because he can't keep his name out of the headlines off the field. Ironically enough, there's a tight end and a running back that are ranked fairly close at their respective positions to where Tyreek Hill ranks as a wide receiver on a down year. But that's neither here nor there. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine I have graded as the 3rd wide receiver, and then I had Malik Washington graded as the 4th. What's fun is Malik I had as a 3rd round grade. He's still grading as a 3rd round player after his rookie season. 7 opportunities for a player that would come in at wide receiver and rank above Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. That includes the 4 potential first-round guys in Ibuka, Golden, Tet McMillan, and Luther Burden. Don't realistically think any of those are in play unless the Dolphins do have plans with number 10. But then also Elek Iomanor from Stanford, Jack Betch from TCU, and Jaden Higgins from Iowa State. I all have graded as I think they could come in and be a more impactful player than Nick Westbrook-Ikhine in year one. And of course, Nick's value is not necessarily going to be catching a ton of footballs, but it's what he does in the run game and it's what he does as an ancillary player. And how he can kind of blur the lines a little between 11 and 12 personnel. So that's not an easy job for a wide receiver in a complex offense to come from a college spread per se and come in and have that same level of impact. There's more names that are ranked lower that I think long-term will be better football players. Like Jalen Knoll is from Iowa State is ranked right below Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. But that's Jalen Knoll right now versus Nick Westbrook-Ikhine probably in the prime of his career. At tight end, I do have 2 players that would be considered, I think, upgrades over Jonnu Smith, from the jump. It's Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland. Should be no surprises there. Those are the consensus top players. But then you get to the other tight end spot. Pharaoh Brown, and I'm not including Alec Ingold because he's a fullback, but he does do some F tight end stuff. But Pharaoh Brown's the next, he's the Y tight end on the roster. I got 10 names after the 2 that we mentioned with Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, right? Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo. I have 2nd round grades on both of those guys. There's some buzz Mason Taylor might sneak into the 1st round. but also Elijah Arroyo. So there's 2 in the first, or 2 in the first, 2 in the second. And then I have 2 in the third. Gunnar Helm from Texas. That Texas offense has a lot of parallels to what Miami's offense looks like at times. Harold Fannin from Bowling Green, although he is more of an F. He's not a Y tight end, so you're comparing apples to oranges in that regard. But nevertheless, it's a tight end that's ranked higher than where the next Dolphins tight end is listed on the draft board. Thomas Fidone, Jalen Conyers, Terrence Ferguson, Jackson Hawes, Mitchell Evans. These guys are all potential Y tight end type players. Hawes is an authentic Y. I think Thomas Fidone is kind of a hybrid Y. Conyers can put his hand in the dirt, but is more of a flex. Same for Terrence Ferguson. Mitchell Evans, more of a traditional Y. All of those players and options. So this is really the first look at the draft board where you see, hey, realistically, where is an upgrade opportunity where we're going to have a surplus number of swings at the bat to have an opportunity? And I think tight end is one of those spots, that white tight end position. And obviously the Dolphins, I think they only guaranteed $20,000 off Pharaoh Brown's contract. So it's not like he's coming in here with a whole bunch of security with a bunch of guaranteed money. So if I'm Miami, maybe I have it in the back of my head, and it seems like there's a sweet spot between the fourth round has Fidone from Nebraska, Conyers from Texas Tech, Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech, Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame, and then I also have Oronde Gadsden as an F in this bucket as well. So I got 6 names. Between 98, this isn't a position that typically runs fast early, between 98, 116, 135, you might be able to say, hey, I have a feeling we're probably going to get an upgrade opportunity with a player capable of being an upgrade if he does what he needs to do when he comes in here and we draft him. Potentially with one of those, picks 3, 4, 5, and 6 in our draft order, or 3, 4, and 5 in our draft order. So that's kind of, as you're setting expectations for where are they going to really upgrade the roster, I think there's a good opportunity to upgrade the roster there. Offensive tackle, not so much. I do have 3 players in this year's class that I think walking in the door will be an upgrade over Austin Jackson. It's Josh Simmons, Will Campbell, Armand Membu, with Josh Connerly and Kelvin Banks effectively in the same tier. They're right. They almost have identical grades. So you got a reasonable amount of players that can score similarly or slightly better. Now, obviously, Patrick Paul being the other name on this list, I had a 3rd round grade on Patrick Paul when he came out. I think he played above expectation, but as I graded him off of his strengths and his weaknesses as a 1-year NFL player, he still grades in kind of the 3rd round bucket and tier as potentially an adequate starter when it's all said and done. But I do have some names that I think linger as potential upgrades over Patrick Paul. Not that I would be drafting to upgrade over Patrick Paul because you have the other needs elsewhere, and the tie is going to go to those areas that you have a more pressing need, like guard, like defensive tackle, potentially like tight end, probably like corner when we get there, right? But it's Josh Connerly and Kelvin Banks don't rank above Austin Jackson on his grade when I did the scoring of the Dolphins roster and all the draft prospects for the Dolphins scheme, but they're close. I only have 2 more tackles between that tier and where Patrick Paul sits, which is Ariante Ursary from Minnesota and Chase Lunt from UConn, who also is a 3rd round grade. So, you're going to use a 2nd round grade to draft a 3rd round grade. And Chase Lunt might not be a bad idea as far as being a swing player because he's a tailor-made outside zone player. I mean, the UConn, they played outside zone, and he ran it like nobody's business. I think if you had a little bit more depth across the roster, that'd be a great kind of pick to make. I don't know that the numbers are going to line up for it to be a sensible pick for where the Dolphins have their needs versus their assets right now. I do have Ozzie Trapilo graded effectively the same as Patrick Paul as well, kind of like the same deal as the Austin Jackson, Josh Connerly, Kelvin Banks discussion where they're almost identical grades. But you don't have a ton of upgrade opportunities over your starters. And then you don't really have a ton of upgrade opportunities over your primary swing. If you want to call it Larry Borum, the only guard tackle flexible player that I have that's between Patrick Paul and Larry Borum is Miles Frazier. So that's only 1 more player. And then 2 more tackles, Anthony Belton and Carson Vincent. Belton from NC State. He's one of the players that scores very unfavorably as a potential scheme fit. And then Carson Vincent from Alabama A&M, small school kid, but really talented, as the only ones between Patrick Paul and Larry Borum, and then Keon Smith. So you're pretty light, you're pretty lean on upgrade opportunities. You're only going to have a handful, and predictably speaking, it sounds like these guys are going to run off the board early. So it's a good year to have Patrick Paul in your back pocket. For all the things Dolphins do and don't do well, one thing I think the last couple of years they've done a pretty good job at is having the 2-year snapshot of the draft classes. Now, I retrospectively don't think we probably need to give a 3 this year for a 4 last year to draft Jalen Wright, because it's a very talented running back class. So that one kind of bit you in the rear end. But with the shoe being on the other foot, getting Patrick Paul with a year of development in hand versus this year's tackle class, you'd really be painted into a corner to say it's 13 or bust for tackle. And that's not the case right now. Now you still have questions, but it's not tackle or bust at 13. We need to get to the defensive side of the football. Some areas where there's not a lot of upgrade opportunities, which is good news for the Dolphins. And there's a couple of spots where there's a ton of upgrade opportunities for the Dolphins, which is also good news for the Dolphins. We're getting into all of that next here on Locked on Dolphins, so make sure you guys stick with us. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Dolphins forward as we look to next season. We just got done teasing offensive line guys, and there's continued buzz out there for this week's Armada clear-cut Player of the Week, which is Kelvin Banks. I believe it was Todd McShay just recently dropped a little nugget and said that here's a ton of smoke for Kelvin Banks potentially to the Dolphins. And if they do, it'd be a little out of character, but it would be a tackle-eligible player who would be an upgrade over guard. We have to talk about guard next year on the show. Kelvin Banks has a lot of power in his game, has the ability to create displacement, a lot of athleticism. Ironically enough, the comparison I have for him is Austin Jackson. So, if you're looking for some rugged upgrades on your offensive line, maybe Kelvin Banks is the play. Just like if you're looking for a rugged way to tackle the road ahead, perhaps the Armada is the choice for you. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Kelvin Banks can be as a potential guard insertion on the offensive line. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop Nissan USA today for your all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. So at guard, I have 13 upgrade opportunities. Full disclosure, we had 0 quarterback, 2 running back, 0 wide receiver, 2 over tight end, 1 being Jonnu Smith. Then it was 10. 3 over Austin Jackson. 13 over OG2, which for me is Larry Borum over Liam Eichenberg. This is guys who are capable of playing guard. Simmons, Campbell, Membu, Connerly, Banks, all in the first round. I think all those guys go in the first round when it's all said and done. Tyler Booker, potential option in the 20s for a team. Not a great scheme fit, but still would be a significant upgrade over what the Dolphins have at OG2 right now. Has great displacement ability and power at the first level line of scrimmage. Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson. I think predictably those guys have a pretty good chance to be top 32 players when it's all said and done, and the first round is in the books on Thursday night. And you get the names like Tate Ratledge, Jonah Savinaya, Charles Grant, Marcus Mbow, Miles Frazier. All of those names, every single one of them scored better on the draft board than what Larry Borum did as your second best guard eligible player on the roster. Now, third best if you're including Aaron Brewer, who's obviously committed to playing guard or playing center. James Daniels actually ranks as the highest offensive lineman on the roster. It's Daniels, Brewer, Jackson. Drop Patrick Paul, Larry Borum. Drop Keon Smith, Liam Eichenberg. Okay, so we know what we're working with. Full disclosure. And I'll if you're watching on the YouTube, I will pull it up so you can at least see the illustration of where the top offensive linemen rank. If you're not watching on YouTube, please don't stress. You can get the board. And if you can't read all the names on the YouTube as you're watching, please don't stress. Don't yell at me. So lots of upgrade options at offensive guard when you zoom out. And especially when you consider Liam Eichenberg down in the 5th round bucket, it's another 6 names. I got 19 names the Dolphins can draft anywhere from the 1st through the 5th round that I would consider to be an upgrade opportunity over Liam Eichenberg. Now, if you want to fix the offensive line, you're probably not going to wait till the 5th round to draft the first guy, but I would score him as a better option than what you have. We teased Benito Jones and the defensive tackle situation. We'll make this pretty simple. The Dolphins don't have anybody. They really don't. Benito Jones could be a really fine 400, 500 rotational snap player. If he's more than that, then I think they've completely dropped the ball. But you've got first-round options with Mason Graham, Derek Harmon, Kenneth Grant, potentially Walter Nolan, potentially Tyleik Williams, potentially Alfred Collins. Then you get into the day 2 guys that would include Darius Alexander, TJ Alexander. Omar Norman Lott is more of a situation-type specific pass rusher out of Tennessee. Jamari Caldwell from Oregon. Shamar Turner from Texas A&M. Jordan Phillips from Maryland. Ty Robinson from Nebraska. Joshua Farmer from Florida State. Vernon Broughton from Texas. That's 4th round and up. And you still got every single 5th round player before you get to the bucket where Benito Jones even scored it. This is the double dip for sure. Now, I know some people are looking for it even bigger than a double dip. I believe Omar Kelly in all his mock drafts has the Dolphins taking 3. And if the value's there, like, I don't know how much I would argue with you other than, like, I would like to get some other stuff accomplished in this draft than just drafting defensive tackles. But you could even live in a world where you tell me the Dolphins took defensive tackles at 13 and 48, or if they traded out 13 and go, a later pick in the 1st round and their first, 2nd round pick, and really feel like, hey, we've really invested in this group. And I think you could achieve everything else you want to achieve other than potentially getting a starting cornerback that you feel could be a plug-in rookie starter. You don't have the same upgrade opportunities at edge, and that's part of the appeal of what the Dolphins did with the edge group. Bradley Chubb has Abdul Carter scored above him. Then you have Jalen Phillips and Chop Robinson with Shamar Stewart and Mike Green. Chop, obviously, I have my questions about Chop as an early down player. I think down the stretch he showed a lot of growth. He scored as I had a 2 on Chop in the draft, and now he's scoring as a late 1. So his grade went up from when he was in the pre-draft process to what he showed and put on tape. But there's only 3 edge players that would rank better than the Dolphins' 3rd edge on the roster. It's a sturdy position. There's not too many that can say that with that level of depth. But like at defensive tackle, where you have a standout player and then a couple of prospects before your next one shows up, although not 26, linebackers, kind of the same thing, where Jordan Brooks scores as the Dolphins' best player and is the best player on the board. He's in front of Jahad Campbell from Alabama and Carson Schlesinger, who I think are both going to be 1st-round picks. There are a couple of names between Brooks, Campbell, and Schlesinger, and then where Tyrell Dotson checks in. Demetrius Knight and Danny Stutzman, predictively, potentially both 3rd-round kind of guys. I have Knight graded as a late round 2 player. You have just a handful of opportunities to upgrade that. But then when you see the depth of Dotson, between Dotson and both Willie Gay and KJ Britt, there's only one other linebacker ranked stacked on the board. It's Jeffrey Bassett from Oregon. So you don't have a lot of upgrade opportunities over Tyrell Dotson. And then the players that are behind Tyrell Dotson, you've got a good amount of depth in that room. So I'm not saying like cross it out altogether and forget linebacker exists for this draft, but you'd have to have a very specific kind of board to be like, yes, we should draft Danny Stutzman at 98. Because the ROI versus, where Willie Gay and KJ Britt are at, your depth, you're rolling 4 deep there with players that are ranking comparably to where, that player at 98 would be ranked. At corner, I do have Jalen Ramsey on the board. in orange instead of a aqua nameplate, and he does have a asterisk next to his name because he's not going to be here. And I know there's some hoping and some wishing and some, well, maybe they won't trade. It's probably going to happen. Probably this week. Not guaranteeing this week, but probably this week. So I'm not really including Jalen Ramsey in the conversation at corner, which means at corner, I have 6 prospects that rank in front of Kader Kohou, would walk in and be the CB1 on the team. Travis Hunter, you ain't going to draft him, so go ahead and forget about it. Jahdae Barron, Will Johnson, very realistic options at 13. But then I also have kind of this bucket of late 1, early 2s. Savon Revel from East Carolina, although he's coming off a season-ending injury. Trey Amos from Ole Miss. Darian Porter from Iowa State. That's the 6. Hunter, Barron, Johnson, Revel, Amos, Porter. I would have ranked and graded in front of Kader Kohou. The next corner on the roster, not including Jalen Ramsey, and after Kader Kohou, the way that I graded him out was Storm Duck. And Storm Duck has a 4th-round evaluation right now. So he's in the bucket with the 4th-round guys. That's good news is that's a restricted free agent for you that you got graded to that level off of 1 year of experience. The bad news is there's not a lot of names in the 3rd-round bucket, although there are 6 total corners that would serve as upgrades over CB2. In addition to, or it's 5, excuse me, in addition to the 6 that sit in front of Kader Kohou. So you got potentially 11 upgrade opportunities over CB2. That's Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish, Maxwell Hairston. Those guys are 2nd-round valuations. Zaire Thomas from Florida State, early 3rd rounds, fringe top 64 player for me. And then you have Noel Williams from Cal and Tommy Hill from Nebraska. So if the board ends up being a disaster at picks 13 and 48 as it pertains to corner, there are a couple of names that I would say, hey, this guy I think could still come in and be an up. I think Noel Williams would still be an upgrade over Storm Duck. Now, it's not going to alleviate and answer all your problems, but if we're being honest, the Dolphins are going to get at least one position room when it's all said and done that you're going to look at when training camp starts and you'll be like, well, that sucks. Like, that's not good enough. You're going to have some concern with at least one of the groups because it's going to have a lot of young, unestablished talent. I think that's just the reality of the situation that we're in right now. And then over at safety, I have 4 safeties that would grade as upgrades over Iafetu Melifonwu as the day 1 walk-in, be the starting safety 1 on the team. That's Malachi Starks, Nick Eamon-Warrick, Xavier Watts, and Andrew Makuba. I have 2 of those, Starks and Eamon-Warrick in the 1st round. I have Xavier Watts as a late 1, early 2, and then Andrew Makuba I have as a 2. I then have Ashton Davis. He's in the 4th-round bucket, so there's, another 4 names that would score as upgrades over Ashton Davis. Lathan Ransom from Ohio State, Jonas Sanker from Virginia, Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State, and Jaden Reed from Penn State as well. So some respectable options. Defensive tackle, I've got a good amount of confidence is going to sort itself out. I have a pretty good amount of confidence that they're not going to mess around for long enough on the offensive line and sit here and get cute. And even if they do, that guard 2 spot is so bad, it's going to be a better spot when they walk out anyway. You just don't want them to wait too long. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. Remember, we're on Touchdown Miami. You can keep an eye out for the horizontal board dropping later today. Kyle Krabs, keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. I'll talk to you all again soon.